I've lived in this building for almost 5 years, and I've always had a relaxed relationship with my neighbors. Nothing too intimate, but enough to maintain that atmosphere of mutual respect. Greetings in the elevator and a friendly smile. Until the resident of 710 moved in. Alone in her early 30s, full of energy, and with that, I'm too good for you to distrust me air. At first, she seemed just that, outgoing, lively, and overly friendly. Always smiling, very helpful, always with a ready answer for any topic. You know that kind of person who wants to be friends with everyone in record time? Well, that was her. But all this friendliness started to get strange. At first, she would compliment me a lot. What a beautiful dress. Or, you have such good energy, things like that. But gradually, the compliments started to focus solely on him, my husband. And she was subtle. Very subtle. It started with, wow, your husband is super polite, isn't he? Then, he's so patient. I think it's beautiful to see a couple who respect each other like that. And suddenly, she'd show up at the same time he was going down to work. Sometimes we'd go out together, and she'd find a way to pull him into a conversation while leaving me alone, as if I were just a shadow beside him. I tried to ignore it. You know how you don't want to seem paranoid? You don't want to be the jealous one? Yeah, I felt that way. Forcing a smile as I watched her laugh too hard at his jokes, touch his arm while she spoke, make those comments full of subtext like, your husband is very patient. My ex was an ogre. I wish I could find one like that, you know? She'd drop these pearls of wisdom looking straight at me as if testing my reaction. And I, trying to remain polite, just responded with an look and changed the subject. But inside, something really started to bother me. I started to pay more attention, and I realized it wasn't just me. She'd wait for him in the lobby. She'd make excuses to run into him in the garage. Even when he was getting something from his car at night, she'd appear out of nowhere. Once, he commented, funny, it seems like every time I go out, I run into that woman from 710. I laughed awkwardly and said, yeah, she's got a fine-tuned radar. And that's when I started to doubt my own passivity. I was seeing everything, feeling everything, suspecting everything. And yet I kept quiet. All for fear of seeming exaggerated. Until one night in the elevator, I saw a scene that put me on high alert. There were 3 of us. She got on the 9th floor and stood next to him. I was on the other side, watching. She began with her usual, "What perfume is that? Wow, it's making me want to get closer," and she laughed. The elevator fell silent. My husband smiled awkwardly, answered the name of the perfume, and stared at the door. She, without the slightest shame, turned to me and said, "Girlfriend, you're lucky, you know? A man who smells good is something else." Girlfriend. Lucky? It wasn't just niceness anymore. It was a game. And she was having fun playing it. I knew, right then and there, that this story would still lead to trouble, but I still had no idea how it would go down. Spoiler, with the whole building watching. After that scene in the elevator, the so-called nice guy from 710 stopped pretending. She realized my husband wasn't quite sure how to react and used that as an opening to intensify the flirting, which now came without any subtlety. And me? I kept watching, analyzing, because something inside me told me it was going to explode. At any moment. She started being everywhere. If he was going down to pick up a package, she would coincidentally appear with a garbage bag in her hand. If he came home from work at 7 p.m., she would appear in sweaty gym leggings saying, "Wow, you're always on time, huh? What a disciplined man." Always staring too much, laughing too much, leaning in too close. One night, my husband told me she knocked on the apartment door asking for sugar. Yes, sugar. He said he was baking a cake and didn't want to go down to the grocery store. I was in the shower, so she had the misfortune of finding him alone, and according to him, she walked in, grabbed the sugar, and blurted out, "Your wife is lucky. You're a very complete man." Complete? I took a deep breath. Again, he said she was joking. That it was her way. Clueless. But I knew. It wasn't cluelessness. It was intention disguised as a joke. The kind of provocation that if you complain, they call you over the top. But if you do nothing, she moves on, and that's what she did. At TU, the building's end-of-year event, she arrived wearing a tight dress, club makeup, and stiletto heels. Fine, everyone dresses as they please. But she spent the entire event near my husband. Not our group, but him. When I approached, she moved away. When he was alone, she appeared. There was a moment when I went to the kitchen to get something, and when I returned, I saw her leaning against him on the balcony, talking quietly, laughing, the kind of scene that made me freeze in the middle of the room. Not because he was responding, because he wasn't, but because she wasn't even trying to hide it anymore. And that was driving me crazy. I started to feel ridiculous, as if I was losing ground in my own marriage, in my own home. And for a woman who wasn't even pretty enough, smart enough, or even close to us, she was just opportunistic. And the most painful thing was seeing that, although he didn't encourage it, he also didn't clearly block it. I had a serious talk with him. I told him I wasn't comfortable with the situation, that she was overstepping her bounds, and that his lack of a firmer stance was hurting me. He got serious. He said he understood, apologized, and promised to keep his distance. But it was no use, because what I didn't know yet is that someone else had already figured it all out too, and that the building's security cameras would capture much more than I expected. I didn't know justice would come with a set date and time, much less that it would come in the form of a security video. It all started on an ordinary evening. A Sunday at the beginning of the month, the building was calm with few people around. I was on the couch watching some random series when my phone started vibrating. Notifications from the condominium group. Nothing unusual. Sometimes someone forgot the gate remote. Other times they complained about the noise from Unit 302. But this time, it was different. A resident had made a post like this. Good evening, everyone. Management is reviewing some CCTV footage due to suspicious activity on the 3rd floor. And, well, we came across something that wasn't what we expected to see. First of all, we're here to remind you to respect each other's space. And right after that, the video. I couldn't believe my eyes. It was a recording of the hallway on our floor, clearly captured by the security camera on the ceiling, with that typical overhead angle, a bit cold, without sound. And there she and my husband were. What I saw stopped me. Not because of his attitude, because thank God he didn't respond, but because of her boldness. She corners him against the wall, laughs loudly, touches his arm insistently, and then does the unthinkable. Leans in to try to kiss him. Yes. In the hallway on our floor, inside the building, under a camera. My husband immediately recoils. He takes 2 steps back, raises his hand as if to say, stop. He's visibly uncomfortable. He says something and walks away. She, in return, smiles as if she'd made a silly joke. She straightens up, turns her back, and walks away as if nothing had happened. I watched this twice without blinking. The 3rd time, my hands started sweating. The 4th time, my chest burned. And on the farm, I no longer felt anger. I felt shame for her. The group in the building exploded. People were shocked. People were outraged. Neighbors said, I knew it. Others asked who she was, how someone could do that. And then someone wrote, it's the one from 710, the one who's always smiling at everyone. The mask fell with a bang. My phone was buzzing nonstop. I received private messages from neighbors, some even apologizing for never believing what I discreetly said. And her? She remained silent. Not an excuse, not a word. Until hours later, she wrote in the group, guys, it wasn't what it seems, it was just a joke. Sorry if anyone misunderstood. Did you misunderstand? The woman tried to kiss a married man in the middle of the hallway in front of a security camera and wanted to justify it as a joke. It was pathetic, but at the same time, liberating. Because in that moment, it was no longer me going against my own intuition. Now everyone had seen it. She was no longer the cool one from 710. She was the woman who tried to steal what wasn't hers, and did it with such arrogance that she ended up exposed in front of everyone. And for the first time, I didn't have to say a word. The video spoke for me. After the group's presentation, The atmosphere in the building changed as if someone had changed the air. People stopped pretending they didn't see. They stopped smiling politely at her in the elevator. They stopped accepting her forced friendliness as harmless. The woman from 710 was no longer the talkative neighbor. She was the scandal of the month. The day after the video, she didn't leave the house. The next day, neither did she. At the lobby, I heard that she ordered food delivery and made a point of telling the doorman not to buzz her, just to leave it at the door. And the most ironic thing of all is that this was exactly how she had always lived, surrounded by a theater of presence, but completely empty of truth. When the mask fell, there was nothing left, only embarrassment and silence, and the looks of her neighbors who now knew who they were dealing with. On the third day, she left, and the whole building saw. She descended in the service elevator, wearing sunglasses, her hair tied back, trying to go unnoticed. But it didn't work. She got into her car with what was clearly a carry-on bag and left. Days later, the apartment was put up for sale. No letter, no explanation, no attempt at a direct apology. She just ran from her own shame. And what about me? It was strange at first. I felt a mixture of anger, relief, and a hint of humiliation. But she got over it, because in the end, I was the one who came out of this with my head held high. The entire building knew what happened, but they also knew that my husband didn't give in, that I never made anything up, and that my intuition was right from the first day she forced that smile. And most importantly, they knew that I didn't lower my head. I continued, living here, smiling at those who looked at me with respect, walking the halls with a light touch, and most importantly, showing that the woman ridiculed in the video wasn't me. She tried to destroy my marriage. He tried to play the victim. He tried to come out on top, but she was the one who fell. And the fall was public. Today, when I see someone trying to say it's just a joke, I remember the video, and I think, be careful with jokes. Sometimes they become evidence.